I appreciate the invitation, and this is a continuation in part of a presentation I gave with this organization in its prior name. I strive to make all my presentations novel, useful, and non-obvious, although this does recycle some prior material, which is why it's a continuation. Much that is new and improved, but my prior art was in March of 2020, and I'm curious, how many of you have seen that presentation? Can you raise your hand? Only one. Okay, great. So yeah, for you, it may not be as new, but it's mostly new. My style is that since one can read much faster than you can listen, and you can listen much faster than most people speak, and since spare mental cycles tend to lead to multitasking, which lowers retention, I'm going to try to use those spare cycles and rely on the Doppler effect, which is the tendency of stupid ideas to seem smarter when they come at you rapidly. So I'm a venture capitalist. I've invested over $500 million in venture capital the past 37 years, over 150 companies, over 100 funds. I'm not a lawyer, but I keep many well fed. And I'm an inventor, co-inventor in about 17 issued patents. I've been involved in some amicus briefs, and I have no interest in any troll, PAE, or entity behaving as such. My expertise is as a VC and the role that patents play in that, and how patents can affect the success of small companies. Patents don't matter much to software and internet, as we've already seen, although some of those results are kind of surprising, I have to say. But they do to most other technologies. The National Venture Capital Association had software internet types who didn't like patents, and so the NVCA had been mild in its criticism of prior builds. In 2014, that changed, but now they're losing interest again, unfortunately. Okay, we talked about this, but one thing not as clear, since the PTO takes so many years to issue and there's many, many more years for enforcement, that's too slow for many types of businesses, especially software and internet, which move very quickly. So that's one of the reasons why it makes it less relevant for them. Patents are needed for innovations that are easy to copy once the pioneer has shown the way. Medical devices and biotech are a good, clear example, but energy and clean tech, Internet of Things, semiconductors, electronics, optics, for example, LiDAR for automating vehicles, most tangible things, and others that are miscellaneous and yet to be invented. Investors tend to think differently. This is an allusion to Apple's think different. And creativity is often associated with non-neurotypical people. For example, obsessive compulsive people, not necessarily disorder. It's not always a disorder if it doesn't interfere with one's ability to function. There's a wonderful book called America's Obsessives, The Compulsive Energy That Built a Nation, which talks a lot about those. Dyslexics are disproportionately represented among CEOs and founders of companies. There's a book about the creativity associated with that called The Mind's Eye. Autism spectrum disorders, Temple Grandin being an example of a well-known inventor who is very much on that spectrum. And then in my own experience, I've also seen bipolar and schizophrenia. So in other words, not all of these talented people are otherwise employable. Some could only be CEOs because they can't deal with reporting to someone and vice versa. And many just don't work well in organizations. But for 247 years, many have been thriving in this country by inventing. There have been huge externalities that benefited all of us from that. And I think this is an interesting topic worthy of research. I'm bringing this up because there are so many researchers in the room. Let's put it out there to suggest. Incumbents like incumbency, it turns out. Joseph Schumpeter coined the phrase creative destruction, and new technology, usually from the entrance, swept away old and thereby improved things. But lo and behold, the incumbents don't like the destruction part of that. So patents have been hugely important for this, but unfortunately are declining. And despite the patent system being on its deathbed, big tech is not done trying to destroy it. They've been taking a somewhat different approach than in the past, so that now they primarily hide behind shills that pretend to advocate for small companies. Exhibit A is engine advocacy, which has testified on patent issues many times. Google has funded it since its inception in 2013, and in 2018 this report came out called The Lobbyist in the Garage. The subtext, in case you can't read it, is Engine says it's the voice of startups in the government. It serves Google's corporate interests instead. And if you look at what they say, they pretend to be speaking on behalf of small entities who are suffering from patent trolls, but really it's actually Google and other big tech wanting to weaken all patents. So Exhibit B, news from this Monday, Apple flexes its muscle as quiet power behind App Developer Group, the App Association, which claimed to represent all the little app makers. Lo and behold, most of their budget comes from Apple, and their positions are those of Apple. And if you look on their website, there's lots of statements over the past many years about patents, mostly SEP-related patent stuff, but Yet another shill. So why do they hide behind shills? Well, to deceive people regarding who benefits from this. They want to pretend it's not for them, it's for little companies, and to reduce the risk of blowback, more techlash. Trying to hide actions is inherently suspicious. The best antidote is to expose it, so I recommend it. In the 1870s, the railroad industry tried to destroy the patent system. They were being sued for patent infringement too much, especially by George Westinghouse, who invented the air brake that they were using and not licensing. And this was a similar story today with big tech. Steve Haber and Naomi Lemmer wrote this excellent book, which I recommend. Another great book I recommend, at the risk of sucking up to the moderator, is Jonathan Barnett's book. History should be taught in order to avoid repeating it, which unfortunately we are repeating today. And another recent history lesson regarding Google that hopes to address why they are so anti-patent. The one hypothesis that I have is that it may be due to one of my companies that sued Google in 2002. Its name was GoTo.com. They later changed their name to Overture. They invented the paid search ranking model, which Google, well, I'll get to it. So GoTo missed the filing deadline on their core IP by 1 day. Someone, I think, put it on the wrong day on the calendar or something. But they did patent secondary stuff, and ultimately Google copied this company and improved upon it. That's what became AdWords, which is their primary business model today. And there was a patent lawsuit, and in 2004 there was a settlement where Google paid them 2.7 million shares for their main business, which is a meaningful settlement. But I suspect that left a bad taste in their mouth, but they're still at it. For those who are not aware, see the Sonos versus Google lawsuit. It's serious misbehavior by Google. They could easily have afforded a license, and they're wielding their balance sheet to file frivolous cases. And such behavior should, in my opinion, be an antitrust violation. And yesterday I asked a question about this issue of the antitrust panel, and they felt that would be hard to rein in due to the Noor-Pennington doctrine. I think that should be looked at more closely. And another proposal I have is perhaps a new law requiring the plaintiff to fund the expenses for the defendant and a function of the ratio of their respective market caps. Anyway, I allege that techlash has been misdirected and that the destruction of the patent system is the worst actions that big tech has brought about. And I should also add, it's not just big tech that has been undermining the patent system. There are a number of other trade associations representing various industries that don't like patents because they don't use patents for their market power, and so they always find themselves on the defendant's end of things. And therefore they hop aboard, they're lobbying against patents, but we're all beneficiaries of the patent system insofar as we consume medical services and live in a modern society, but nevertheless, lots of people are on that bandwagon. It's virtually unknown that the patent system has been substantially harmed, nor who's behind it. I believe these perspectives need to disseminate outwards. And I also allege that the savings that big tech and others have by reducing the strength of the patent system are not material even to them in terms of fraction of revenues or fraction of profits. They're less than a basis point. I suspect and believe that they would stop what they're doing if there were blowback for this behavior. You can all help create that. In conclusion, I think we need legislation to strengthen the system, and the traditional opponents of this should reconsider what they're doing. And antitrust law should be applied for PTAB pylons, and courts need better IP awareness and understanding of what's at stake. And you all have a role to play. Please use your voice to help fix all this. Thank you.